Welcome to the Neo News Today podcast. I'm your host, Dylan of Neo News Today. In episode 55 of the NNT pod, I sat down and spoke with Joe Stewart, or better known as Hal OX2328, to the online Neo community. Joe is currently a member of COZ, but has worn many different caps as a developer and participant in the Neo ecosystem. In this episode, Joe and I talked about his entrance into the Neo ecosystem in 2017, the differences in developing on Neo back then versus today, the recent COZ Flyby hackathon and the project he and his team won with, what drives him as an ecosystem community member, the Neo Frontier Launchpad, and much more. So I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation with Joe as much as I enjoyed having it. Hey guys, what's going on? Dylan with the Neo News Today podcast. Today I am speaking with Joe Stewart, who the Neo community might better know as Hal OX2328. How are you doing today, Joe?
I'm doing great, Dylan. Thanks.
I'm really excited to have you join the podcast because you're a long-time developer in the Neo ecosystem. When I attended Neo DevCon 1 in San Francisco back in January 2018, not only was it my first blockchain event, but you were also on stage talking about Neo Smart IoT back then. And you had these really cool lanyards that would light up whenever somebody invocated a smart contract. So you were talking on stage and your lanyard would light up in different colors, which was really cool. So you've had a lot of different roles in the ecosystem. You've worked on projects. You work on behalf or alongside COZ right now. You're extremely active in the Neo Discord server. So maybe you could just help fill in the gaps or share in your words what your role is in the Neo ecosystem.
Yeah, I just try to provide support wherever I can. Whatever my skill set offers, I try to fill in the gaps. There's obviously, only so many developers in this ecosystem right now, and we're trying to get more. And I think being able to be there and answer questions for people that are just getting started is a big boost, and it'll help grow the ecosystem overall, and then make all of our holdings more valuable in the long run. So that's been my approach.
Totally. So if I'm not incorrect, you've been developing in or on the Neo blockchain since 2017. So maybe you could just share what attracted you to Neo and what has kept you around.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So back in 2017, I was looking at different cryptocurrency platforms. I'd heard about Ethereum a few years before, and I kind of kept my eye on it. And the opportunity arose. I was leaving one job and looking to start a company, doing some contracting. I was like, we'd really like to get into blockchain. I think that's where things are going to be headed in the future. And so I started doing some research. I looked at Ethereum, and there were just certain things about it I didn't care for. One of the things is having to learn Solidity. At that time, I really didn't have much JavaScript background, which is very I guess the nearest thing to Solidity. And I was like, I'm gonna have to learn a completely new language to do this. And then I came across Neo. And Neo had, Python, C#, and I was like, this is great. I've already got a little bit of experience in these languages, and the language looked pretty straightforward compared to Solidity. So I said, let me dive in and figure out how this works. And so I just started, downloading, all the different components, trying to get to, use some of the example smart contracts, and got into it. And then the next thing there was a hackathon announced. I was like, wow, hey, here's our chance to kind of like not just, get our feet a little bit more into the ecosystem there, but also earn a little bit of money for our new company. So that's how it all got started. That first hackathon really kind of made us, dive deep into the ecosystem. And I just really liked the approach of Neo, but I also probably more than that, I really liked the community. It was on Slack back in those days. It wasn't on Discord yet, but already everybody was really open and sharing and helping each other, and lots of cool stuff being developed. And I just didn't see that a lot in other communities in crypto. Actually, some communities in crypto can be rather toxic, and I wasn't really into that. I'd spent a few years before that hanging around in the Dogecoin groups, and I really liked that community. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. I felt that Neo captured a lot of that, but also had a lot of capability to offer. So, I just decided it's Neo or bust for me.
And here we are 4 years later. You recently participated in the COZ Flyby hackathon, which was an event that was designed to test out COZ's tooling for N3 ahead of the Neo Frontier Launchpad event. So maybe you could just share a little bit from your perspective about what the goals were for COZ's Flyby hackathon, and maybe what the desired deliverables were from the event.
Yeah, so the thing about COZ is there's a lot of developers working individually on specific projects, and not a lot of crossover. So if I need to know something about what the latest features are of Neo Mamba, for example, I'm going to have to go and ask somebody, and take my eyes off the project I'm working on. So I think one of the goals was to kind of get some cross pollination of the different projects in the ecosystem, get them tried out by everybody else, so everybody gets a better perspective on the state of the tools, and then somebody who's coming in, maybe with obviously some blockchain experience, but maybe not the experience in that one tool, is saying, oh, if I were going to write a dApp, I'm going to need this feature, and it's not in there yet. So that's the other thing, is kind of uncover what the gaps were remaining in the tools that might make them more difficult to use, especially for the upcoming Frontier hackathon.
So you were part of the team that won the hackathon. The project was called Cryptsidra.
Right.
It was an application that was designed to automate funding for somebody who wants to maybe hire a freelance coder or content creator, and also include a way to cancel the contract while also enacting a timeline. So could you maybe share a little bit about what your project was and what the goals were for designing it?
Yeah, I mean, it was an idea around streaming payments. One of the goals was to be able to do something that we knew we could accomplish in a week that we had for the duration of the hackathon. Based on my experience in writing smart contracts in the past, I kind of figured, yeah, I could probably write that contract in a couple of days, and we could make a front end for it probably within a week. So we went with that. The idea, behind streaming payments is just to, do something that the real world financial systems cannot do. If you want to do a job for somebody and get paid, you have to either take it all up front, all at the end, or you have to take specific increments as you go along. But there's no way in the real world to just say, I'm going to set a timer and, here's your salary. I'm going to put it all in there and you withdraw it, according to how much time is accrued over that time period, which is great. Sometimes you're a little tight for cash and you need to get that money early. Well, there it is. It's yours. It's already, whatever you've earned up to that point, you can withdraw it at any time. It gives you a lot of freedom and flexibility. And then the other, goal is, have something that, allows both sides to do some sort of contracting arrangement or, buyer seller type of deal for something. And both parties can kind of get past that, distrust if they don't know each other, right? You're always worried if you're doing contracting work for somebody, you're worried that you're not going to get paid, and then you're going to deliver the product, and then they're just going to ghost you. And that's happened to me. I'm sure that's happened to pretty much everybody out there who's done any contracting work for anybody online. You just, you never know. This person seemed trustworthy, but at the end of the day, they just take off, and you don't get paid. And then on the other side, you got people, probably happens less often, but you pay somebody to do a job and they just don't do it. They drag it out, they come up with excuses and they're like, yeah, I'll finish that. And they just kind of drop communication with you after a while. And you've already put up, some part of the money up front. And that's disappointing. That's a waste of not only your money, but your time too, because you could have been paying somebody else more reliable to do that in the interim. So streaming payment gives you a way to kind of look at the progress. Maybe you can divide that stream up into deliverables so that you can say, okay, I'm going to put this much money up front to get to this goal. And then we're going to see how it goes and goes from there. And so both parties, I think, benefit from that money being posted and kind of know that the payment's going to go through and the work's going to get done.
So this was, I think, one of a few projects that you and your team had kind of bounced around. So it sounds like you have a lot of side projects in your mind in addition to a lot of the work that you already do. So are there any plans to continue building out Cryptsidra?
Yeah, there are. We do want to release that because it is something I think useful to the ecosystem. And we can do it in a way that really requires, no fee, right? We don't have to take a fee for doing this and turn it into a business because, you've got basically the work that's already been done. And, we could host this on NeoFS. So, I mean, it could just be self-sustaining kind of autonomous dApp, right? Which is kind of, I think, the goal, of cryptocurrency ultimately is to be able to remove as many middlemen as you can from the transaction and just let the chain do the work.
Yeah, that's definitely the kind of financial sovereignty that blockchains can offer, and something I'm kind of curious to hear about since, you participated in the first COZ hackathon in 2017. Would you have been able to build Cryptsidra in 2017 with the tooling that was available in the ecosystem then, as quickly as you did or as efficiently as you did? Or maybe you could just share a little bit about the differences between building in 2017 and building today.
It would have taken a lot longer in 2017. It probably wouldn't have been able to work the same way. The great thing about N3 is being able to directly pay arbitrary amounts of Neo gas from a smart contract. That's something that's been kind of a stumbling block this entire time for Neo 2. If I were to do this in 2017 and we were to use gas, it would have had to be some really convoluted arrangement where we're tracking UTXOs that are, assigned to the contract, and being able to pay out a fraction of that is difficult without some sort of helper, that's on some centralized component outside the ecosystem. So it really would have taken longer, and it would have been less decentralized and ultimately not as good.
So there were a lot of great projects that came out of the Flyby hackathon. What was your perspective of the event and just the general types of projects? And maybe is that indicative of the progress of tooling and the general ecosystem over the past 4 years? Maybe you could touch upon, the differences between then and now.
Yeah. So, one of the big differences, for COZ especially is, the Python is kind of our big thing, right, for smart contracts. And Neo BOA now has full support for debugger, and it integrates very nicely with the NGD project out of Seattle, the Neo blockchain developer toolkit. So now it's just so easy to go through and debug your smart contract. In 2017, it was so difficult. You could do test invokes and you could get back a result, but you never know exactly what failed in your contract because you couldn't trace it line by line. I actually had to write my own debugger plugin for Neo CLI, which didn't work quite as well. It could only debug live on the blockchain. It didn't have the ability to just compile this contract and immediately run it step to this breakpoint and examine this stack. It just didn't have that. That's made such a difference. So the fact that we've got support for that now, and Neobo is just amazing. And I think it's it made these projects probably a lot easier for the other teams, and certainly made things easier for us.
What about your perspective on just the general tooling and the ecosystem for other languages as well? What has that path or the progression looked like over time?
Every other language has just made great strides. I don't spend a lot of time coding, for example, in Java or Go for smart contracts or NeoGo, but I do spend some time supporting people that have questions, right? Because they'll come to the channel, have a question, and maybe whoever has that knowledge, may be asleep right now, because this is an international community, right? And so I want to get them, the answer to their question as fast as I can. So I try to learn, about all of the different projects, and yeah, all of these other, ecosystems, these mini ecosystems like NeoGo, for example, which is a project that NSPCC took over from COZ. I mean, they've just done amazing things with that. It's tightly integrated into NeoFS now, so their tools are really great. Um, yeah, everybody's really, really cranking up the work that's being done from all fronts. So it's making Neo a really formidable ecosystem, I think.
Yeah, that's so you just touched upon this, and you're one of the handful of folks who are just like consistently answering questions in Neo Discord. There are a lot of developers who are very active in there, but there's a lot of new people who are starting to trickle into the ecosystem, and I notice that I see this uptick in activity in the Dev General channel. So can you kind of tell me a little bit from your perspective about some of the recurring themes you're seeing when communicating with new devs? Like, what are they looking for? What are they asking? What do they want to do? Just any insight would be nice to hear about.
Yeah, the recurring theme is there an example of doing this in a smart contract, right? And a lot of examples have been written, but it doesn't touch on every capability of the Neo VM yet. And so that's where I'm kind of finding these gaps and trying to fill them. That's something I've done. If somebody comes in and asks, how do you do this in Neo, a lot of times I'll go and write a custom example and put that into a gist and share that, right, so that I have that for them, and then I can refer back to that later if somebody comes in with the same question again, until whatever project incorporates more examples to give people to draw from.
I was in Shanghai in 2019, September 2019, for the Neo Community Assembly, and there were a bunch of people who were sitting in one room talking about all these different goals and visions and ways to build out N3. One thing I noticed is that every single person in there had very strong opinions and ideas about what they wanted to build, what tooling was necessary. I mean, even like a 3 hour discussion about decoupling the Neo VM. So I just want to hear from your perspective about what it's like collaborating with like such a global group of intelligent and passionate developers who have their own unique perspective, and how do you balance kind of fighting for what you think is right and also acquiescing to other people's ideas.
Yeah. Well, I always assume that, somebody else is smarter than me. That, I don't know all there is to know about blockchain. I certainly, do not have the all of the knowledge that the core developers do. I do have strong opinions on certain things that need to be implemented for ease of use. That's my position. So I'm not a very good developer, so I want to make it easier for people that are also just beginning developers, to get started and become better. I'm always trying to improve, so I want to make it as painless as possible for people to get in this ecosystem and build their skills the way that I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to be an advocate, I guess, for the newbies in that regard. And so, yeah, if I feel really strongly about that, I'll post on these GitHub threads. They get very long, a little bit heated, and argue for something. But sometimes, one of the core devs will come back and say, hey, there's a very good reason that we have to do it this way. And then they explain it and lay it out. And it's like, oh, yeah, actually, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There are certain limitations you just can't get around. Right. And these guys have already thought of them usually, are a couple of steps ahead of me. Right. So that's how I approach it. I hope that they listen to my suggestions, and when they make sense, they implement them. I did, get one change made in RC3 because I went and posted a GitHub issue and said, hey, we don't have this feature in the standard library, and we really need it. And so yeah, that got implemented in RC3 the next day, actually. So they do listen and take the ideas into account. When they're good.
So one of the things I'm excited about for Frontier Launchpad, the Neo Frontier Launchpad, which is a hackathon and incubation event that's going to be taking place this summer, it's ongoing right now, is that not only are we going to see the introduction of new projects and new blood into the ecosystem, but we're also going to be kind of real-time testing N3 with a bunch of new developers from outside the ecosystem. So I just want to hear a little bit about maybe what you're excited about for the Launchpad event, whether it's from the core developer experience or if it's from just an outsider's perspective about what's going to be coming into the Neo ecosystem, and also hear a little bit about how you anticipate your role and other ecosystem developers offering support to these new devs coming into the ecosystem.
So yeah, I'm excited about this and figuring out, what all of the gaps are and things that I don't even think about because I've been in it so long. Things that need to be addressed, and having this many people looking at it is great. At the same time, I'm also kind of dreading that, right? Because I know that I'm only going to be getting a lot of questions. I'm going to be spending a lot of time in Discord trying to, research and look through the source code and figure out the answers to these questions and write examples. So it's probably going to take up a fair amount of my time. So it's exciting, but I'm hoping it doesn't just become overwhelming because I think this many developers that have signed up for the hackathon is just amazing.
Totally. I mean, more than 400 developers now, I believe. If I'm wrong, I'll edit this out. But I am curious to hear, the Launchpad event launched last week, and the first week was for the Planathon phase, and that just concluded. So have you noticed any differences in conversations in the Dev General chat from before the event and since the event started? And what have the conversations with new devs been like?
It hasn't increased that much yet. The new devs that we've got in, came in and I asked a bunch of questions early, trying to figure out how all this worked and get pointers to different documentation. And it hasn't actually. I think the actual hackathon doesn't kick off just yet. I think that's in a couple more days. So I'm not sure if that's this weekend is when the floodgates are going to open, and I'm going to start getting inundated with all of the nitty gritty technical questions.
Awesome. So let's get out of the weeds and the nitty gritty. Kind of wrapping up, what are you most excited about for Neo N3?
I'm excited about kind of finally being able to, ditch this whole Chinese Ethereum label that everybody's slapped on it over the years. Neo is so much more than that. It's just an amazing ecosystem, and N3 has just made it so much better. And I'm really looking forward to having just a ton of dApps that are all released and working smoothly on the platform, and be able to say, no, yeah, we actually do have this and this and this application that are all working today, and people are actually using them, and there's significant traffic, and the blockchain is handling it just fine.
So to kind of wrap up our interview, you wear a ton of different hats in the ecosystem. So I just kind of want to ask this general question. What's next? What can Neo News Today listeners keep an eye out coming out of from your end in the next quarter or two?
So I hope to start putting out just more example dApps. I want to get one of the dApps that I had written for Neo 2, which was the safe remote purchase example. I want to get that out for N3. I want to get something around NeoFS that'll make that a nice straightforward example for people of how to include NeoFS in their dApps. So that's it for me. Is not just code snippets, but full end-to-end working dApp examples.
Joe, you've been a beacon in the Neo community for many years now. So I was really excited to have you join the podcast today. And I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule, which seems to be never ending, to come and chat with us today.
Anytime. Always happy to talk about Neo.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to running into you again at a future event in person now that restrictions are kind of easing up. And I wish you the best of luck in answering all the developer questions that will be coming your way for the Neo Frontier Launchpad.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Cheers. Have a good one, Joe.
All right, you too.
Well, what did you think of that conversation? It was awesome hearing more about the Crip Sidra project from the COZ Flyby hackathon, and how it uses the Neo blockchain to do something real-world financial systems cannot. It was also great to learn more about Joe's passion for onboarding new ecosystem developers and how he's building a library of smart contract examples based off their questions. Finally, it was nice to get to listen to Joe share his perspective on how the ecosystem has improved and matured over time during his tenure beginning in 2017. To keep up to date with the latest in the Neo ecosystem, visit www.neonewstoday.com. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channels on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, and/or Spotify. And leave a 5-star review if you feel that others should hear our content. Every subscription and review helps others learn more about the Neo News Today podcast and the Neo ecosystem. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the Neo News Today podcast, and we look forward to catching you next time.